Okay. I wonder how the volume is from my voice to the music. I don't want to be drowned out here. Let's turn that down just a tad. People, I'm sure, will let me know how it sounds. And are we ready, everybody? 3, 2, 1. Oh, that's the wrong view. We want this one. Hello, hello, hello. How are you doing? My name is Michael Markowsky. I'm coming to you live from my studio here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Oh, the music may be even just a tad too low. Let's bring it up just a bit here. It's my wife leaving a few comments. Well, okay. Good. Okay, let me know. Is that okay? Or is that music just a little bit too quiet that it becomes annoying? Okay, so I'm super excited for today's class because we're going to spend the time talking about the nose, the human nose. And this is one of the trickier things to draw, or it's probably the most difficult part of the human face to draw. I think a lot of people think it's the eyes, but I think, like last week we drew the eyes, and while there are some innate difficulties to it, I mean, if you've never done it before, anything's tricky, but paying kind of close attention to where the lines are, if you can do that, then you can nail the eyes pretty easily. Like, our eyes have lots of lines to draw, right? Like, we've got our eyelids, we have our eyelashes, our eyebrows, the iris, and the pupil. Maybe you've got wrinkles or bags. All these different kinds of things are around our eyes make it relatively straightforward to draw an eye, because there's, when we're drawing, we have depending on how you draw, but you have a fine point, and when you're trying to find what to draw, then you just use that point to draw the line. I know this sounds really obvious maybe, but it's not really until you start drawing something that's not like an eye where you realize the trouble we get into, right? And the nose is the perfect example of a trouble area, or an area that can give us some difficulty, because, unlike our eyes, I'm looking into the camera, right? We've got all these lines, but the nose, how do you draw this? How do you draw this? How do you draw this? Right? The nostrils on the face of them, they are we can see kind of some quote unquote sharp edges. But right, once we start moving our nose up and down, well, they're round too. So, in a way, it's sort of like, here, I've got my coffee cup here. Which part, if I'm going to draw I can draw the outside edge of the coffee cup, because that's where literally the glass ends and the world beyond begins. But let's say I want to draw the inside part of the coffee cup. So let me see on your angle. So how there's the outside part and then the inside part, and it's kind of round all the way back down. So where does the line go there, right? So these are things that, as an artist, I spent a lot of time thinking. In fact, I wrote my graduate master's degree thesis all about, where is the line? Where do we draw the line, right? And I expanded it more than just drawing, but into a philosophical thing. Because, we can even think about, let's say, your arm, right? If we're going to draw your arm, well, we have the skin, but then we've got hair coming off the arm. So where exactly does your arm in the world begin? That's a whole other thing that involves years of French theory. Anyway, so the nose is a little bit tricky. And once we start turning and moving up and down, trying to describe all the different surfaces is a bit of an ordeal. So there are some tricks that I'm going to show you that help simplify this and make the whole process so much easier. So I'm going to show you those tricks, but throughout all of this, and I'm going to keep on restating it over and over, I'm showing you one technique. Actually, I'll show you a couple techniques. I'm going to show you a couple techniques different approaches that work pretty well. But I really want to stress that this thing of drawing the nose is both a area of can be frustrating, but it also has so much potential because we have to make some decisions as to where the lines go, and that means that it's your opportunity to use your imagination, your creativity to create new and different ways of doing it. And that's what I think. So we want to try to take this thing that is potentially a problem area and see it as an opportunity, right? We want to shift that way of thinking. So to get started, I thought what we would do is we're going to explore a few different visual styles of how people have drawn noses. And the first one we're going to use as a warm-up, because if you've taken this class before, you know that generally the way I like to start each class is to do a quick warm-up drawing so that you can kind of get your creative juices up and running here. So let me see if, oops, that's the wrong one. Oh, that's the wrong, let's just convert this into the right one. Drag this down here. So here's our computer view, and you can see the very famous Charles M. Schulz's Peanuts, or probably most commonly known to people as Charlie Brown. And we see Charlie in this, well, not in the center, just off to the left, wearing his distinctive yellow and black zigzag outfit, and Snoopy, and gosh, I'm trying to remember all the names of these characters. It's been a long time since I thought about Peanuts. What is her name? I think she's Lucy. Is this Linus? I think, or is this Lucy? I can't remember. Oh, it's been a long time since I've really thought about the Peanuts characters. Anyway, we're gonna draw. How about we'll just do a drawing of Charlie Brown. Maybe depending on how fast we go, we can do Snoopy, and we can do a couple of the other characters there. So you want to get out your sketchbook, and you want to pull up your sleeves, and which view do I want? I think this is the right view. Just making sure I got it dialed in here. And okay. So, is that going to work? Yes. Okay, good. So, what we're going to do is, on a nice fresh piece of paper, let's draw Snoopy. As you know, I'm going to use, you can use all sorts of different kinds of pencils. And in fact, I did, since a couple questions have come up as to like, what's the difference between some of these pencils. Here's your HB pencil. I got a 5B pencil, or here's a 2B, here's a 5B, here's a 7B, and a 9B. So all of these progressively get darker and darker and darker, and you can probably even see that they just seem chunkier. So this 9B pencil, see how it's kind of dull right now? If I'm going to put it back down, I bet you if I drew for about 10 seconds, when it was nice and sharp, it would turn back into that very quickly, kind of dull, whereas opposed to HB pencil, I could draw for maybe 10 minutes before I need to sharpen it again. So these are different kinds of pencils that you could use to draw with, but I'm going to use some colored pencils. You don't have to, but this just helps people see the different stages of my drawing on here. So let's, you know what, I'm going to turn my sketchbook around here so that I can try to get a few of these characters in here rather than just one. So I'm going to draw Charlie Brown first. So I'm going to start out with a circle here. Now, if I was drawing with a regular pencil, I would do what I'm just doing right now very lightly so that maybe it's almost invisible, right? I'm going to put these ears on next. Now you see If this was, well, you know, I'm just going to draw a quick guideline right down the middle, just so we can kind of get an idea. You can see that the ears here aren't right up there. They're down here on the side. I've never actually, I don't think I've ever drawn Charlie Brown. And you see the other ear is kind of just poking out, hiding around this edge. And then well, since we're talking about noses today, the nose here looks like it goes up and down, right here in the middle of the face like that. And the eyes, one there, and one here. And then he's got this kind of wobbly mouth a little bit. So again, and this is my underdrawing. If I want, I can kind of change things and go over my drawing later on, right? Let's do his collar. Before I even get into those details, let me draw his body. Okay. Now his legs. See, I'm kind of getting dangerously close to the bottom. This is why drawing something quickly like this is helpful. Because let's say this was, I don't know, making a sign to take to a rally or something. I'd want it to look good rather than kind of look like these legs are crammed into the bottom. So if I was making a drawing and there was possibly a problem, if I drew it very lightly, I could always erase it and shift everything up a little bit. All right. Okay, so I've got some legs in here. Now I've got his arm, and I'm just going to draw, this is where this arm is going to go. Here's the sleeve, and we've got these fingers, and then this zigzag. Okay, so how about, I'm just going to really quickly go over top of these lines. Start with these big shapes. All right. So again, you can see the difference between this outline, right, which is, you know, in his drawing is, you know, a fairly solid, continuous line. There's not a lot of variation to it. Versus this mouth, and I'm actually going to move the mouth over a little bit. See how it kind of is a little bit wobbly, right? Which is kind of consistent with, you know, the way that I think of all these characters is like a little bit, always a little bit confused. They're, you know, they're supposed to be little kids, so things are always a little bit strange when you're a kid. Okay, there's one ear, and then, you know, see here I made a so-called mistake where technically the head is supposed to come down here and there's supposed to be a gap with that ear, but now I know better for the next drawing I do. All right, okay, draw it in here. So the reason why I chose Charlie Brown right off the top here is that look at where this nose is on this character, right? It's basically, when we talk about like the human proportions, when we're trying to draw something so-called realistically, this is just about the worst possible placement for a nose, right? It doesn't obey any logic. It doesn't really make sense to the world as we understand it. No one's eyes are halfway down their nose in this exact way. And yet, I've never once heard anyone ever say, "Oh, I don't like Charlie Brown. It's just, you know, the characters' faces are so bizarrely abstracted that I find it too hard to believe. I can't take anything seriously with Charlie Brown. Right? I've never heard a single person critique Charlie Brown in that way. And so I turn that off. Turn Charlie Brown's Christmas or Halloween off. I'm disgusted with the way that the nose has been depicted on the face, and I can't take, and so here I'm just going to, well, I'm going to leave that on the screen. So I just think that that's worth, maybe I'll just come back. It's really worth taking a moment just to consider that the way that Charlie Brown's nose is drawn is unlike the way that we see noses on people's faces, right? And it's always kind of from the side. We always see that his nose, even when he's looking straight ahead, the nose kind of does this, comes out to the side. So this should be a good reminder that when we draw noses, this is probably the most exciting part of the face where we can really play. Okay, let's just do, let's do a few more here. Let's draw, you're welcome to draw whatever you like. If you want to draw Snoopy down here, I'm going to draw, let's say, whatever her name is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to draw this. I'm going to start out with the circle. Right, I'm even going to start drawing her body in here. So sorry, I'm drawing the girl in the blue. Whatever her name actually is. Maybe people have written in the comments already, but I can't see just at the moment while I'm working away here. So I'm going to draw. So I'm just quickly throwing things in here, and if they're in the wrong place, I'm going to move them. All right, this is my under drawing. Got a couple feet. And then her hands. And then another hand. Looks like I could make her dress a little bit wider. Okay, so I've got this. Let's just put her mouth is somewhere just like Charlie Brown's. And if I divide this in half, once again, we can see her nose is actually drawn a little bit smaller than Charlie Brown's nose. Right, and her eyes even appear to be closer together. Now we want to get this, her head kind of loops up like this. So rather than being perfectly circular like Charlie Brown's. Okay. And then we've got her hair. And this time I'll get her ear right. So every drawing I'm learning. Okay. So let's go back into here. I'm going to maybe start with this hair. Kind of slightly wobbly mouth again. And then her hair. All right, look at these. Just that these little tiny lines coming off the side just show her hair being, you know, pretty good, but maybe a little bit messy at times, right? So, I always think drawing is about what are the most important lines. What do I really need in this drawing so that people come away knowing that I've drawn a little girl and a little boy, right? Or more specifically, what do I need to draw in order that people know that this is Peanuts characters? Right? In fact, I would argue that the nose in Charles M. Schulz's characters is the defining feature of these characters. That without these kind of very particular noses, this could very easily be changed into dozens and dozens of other characters. And, you know, I probably, you know, if I asked a whole bunch of cartoonists or animators, I don't know if I'd get any arguments whatsoever. I don't know if anybody would say that would disagree with me on that. I haven't thought about it too much, but I would say it'd be pretty easy. Okay, so I've got a couple of these Peanuts characters. I'm just going to take a quick look at... oh, no one's left any comments. That's good. Ay. Okay. So people are drawing away here. You know what? Let's just do one quick little Snoopy down here. Since, what's a drawing of Charlie Brown without... Snoopy was probably my favorite character growing up, so I'll just show you how I would do this. So, you remember when we were drawing animals? It's the same sort of thing. I'm going to start with the head here. So we've got one circle, and then I've got another kind of circle right here. These eyes are somewhere right here. Nose and mouth and ears, right? So I'm always coming up with just very simple shapes. And then we've got this body, and these feet. Okay. So this is my super fast version of Snoopy. Okay, I'm going to start with this nose, because I feel like that's important to kind of nail where that is personally. Okay, this ear, big floppy ear, comes up into the rest of the head. And then I might have drawn the head a little big here, but let's just keep on going right around. Okay, and I'm going to have to make this body just a little bit bigger. And then let's get some of these big paws in here. And again, we've got this kind of wobbly mouth. And then look how these eyes are just kind of drawn so quickly in here. And then this ear. Okay, the dog collar. And tail. And then I think this is supposed to be another leg in behind here. Okay. So, very simple, quick little drawings. We could color all this in, but I think we're going to move forward. I'll just leave that on screen for just a second. Okay. So... getting ready for the next thing here while everybody finishes up their drawing. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next task for today. So what I want to show you is what we're going to look at is from a book called Understanding Comics, which, actually, no, I'm just going to show you. This is the book, Understanding Comics. Fantastic book. If you're interested in cartooning, making comic books, animation, this is a must-read book. Depending on the class I'm teaching, when I teach at the university teaching animation, I'm teaching animation class in the fall, and this will be one of the assigned books students will have to read. And it's a great book, and it's something I've thought about hundreds of times. But it's not only just an interesting book for comic books, I think every artist really should read it, just because he talks about really what art is and how we look at art and how we understand the world. I've used so many different images from, you know, this is kind of his style of drawing in here. I've used so many of his artwork, images from his artwork to illustrate different ideas, because it's really such a wide-ranging book. But anyway, in this book, he talks about, let me see if I get this. One chapter is just about the abstraction of the human face, and he talks about how, you know, we're ingrained to look at faces and everything, and we can look at, you know, a power outlet where you plug in your phone charger and we see a face there, right? We see two little vertical lines and a horizontal line, and immediately our mind goes to a face. We look at the front of a car and we see a face. I mean, they're everywhere. You know, you see tons of videos here on YouTube of people looking at the surface of the moon and seeing faces there, or in the forest, and conspiracy theories pop up and down. So he uses this pyramid to kind of illustrate a few different, oh, before we get there, we want to be here. So he talks about, in the bottom left corner here, this is reality. Like, this is, if you took a photograph of somebody's face, this is where it would be, right? And then as you move up in this direction, things get more and more abstract until they become non-representational, until they do not represent anything at all, and then they just become circles and squares. And so in this area, the face just completely dissolves into just geometric shapes, or it doesn't have to be necessarily geometric. It could be blobby organic forms, right? And then on the other end of this scale here, we have the face turning more and more into language, into like hieroglyphics, and then beyond into letter forms that represent concepts and ideas. So so eventually, instead of just having a symbol, so basically a symbol is the last thing, and the symbol then, instead of just being a face, is maybe a letters that say F-A-C-E, right? So, well, here we go. So this is the full page from, I think this is like a centerfold in that book. I'll just make it a little bit smaller so you can see. And you can look this up. This is Scott McCloud, Understanding Comics, Pyramid or Triangle. And so we're not going to go into super detail here, but I'm just going to zoom in. So let's say we go into this bottom corner here. You know, again, we have photographs, and so what's great about this diagram is he's cataloged all of these different comic book characters and, you know, where they fit on this spectrum, right? So if you had a photograph of somebody, it would be here. You know, all these numbers are all indexed so we could find out like what character number 80 or 81 is. You know, this area here would be kind of like the romance comics from the 50s and 60s, a lot of which were used by the artist Roy Lichtenstein for the big paintings he did in the 1960s. He was a contemporary of Andy Warhol's, if you remember him. I was a big fan of his work, still am. So these kind of just very straightforward, you know, there was like war comic books when I was a kid. And then as we go, let's say we'll go up to the top here, you can see there's very few comic books that ever existed where things just got more really bizarre and abstract. So I don't even know what number 1 is here. I'm trying to think of things off the top of my head that would fit in there. But if we go back into this direction, things get more and more, kind of in this area, things get really cartoony and strange. So if we were to update this book is from 1993, I think, but you'd probably find, you know, Peppa Pig or something would be somewhere up around here, right? Because Peppa Pig really bears very little resemblance to an actual pig if we put one side by side. But we believe it, right? We look at it like, oh, okay, that's a pig. We understand it. It's pink. And so that's all the most basic information that that artist decided was required in order to communicate that this character is a talking pig, right? As opposed to you know, the movie Babe, right? You remember that movie where it's kind of a it looks like a real pig and it's walking around and talking to people, right? So that would be back over here. So visually it hasn't changed. But anyway, so the reason why I'm showing you this whole thing is he's done a really great job of cataloging all of these different kinds of faces. And I want you to kind of take particular kind of note at the different styles of noses that we see in here. So again, here's Peanuts, right? Here's Charlie Brown's nose. Here's Tintin, right? We can see Tintin's nose is very similar to Charlie Brown's, but just much smaller, right? And then the face is more elongated, right? And Popeye, what are some other ones that I just recognize off the top of my head here? Besides obviously some of these ones that are of animals, but Astro Boy, and then, you know, as we go back across here, you know, there's even, let's say I'll zoom in even closer. It kind of starts to fall apart, that image, doesn't it? But you can see some of these images, the nose is just literally a dot or a point or a tiny little circle. Right, and slowly as we go across here, you know, then now we've got like these L shapes as they become more and more representational, right? And then as we get over here, we start getting a little bit more detail in these faces. Okay, so let's, again, that book, Understanding Comics, highly recommended. So what I want to do is we're going to do some drawings of the basic structure of the face. So I'm going to bring up another view here. Give me 1 second. Okay. So what's the best way for me to show you how to do this? Well, how about, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you the idea of how to do it, and then we're going to look at some photographs, and we're going to draw from some photographs. So let's start out. To draw a nose, one way that we could do this is by drawing very simply. We're going to just do a few that are from the front to start out. We're going to do this kind of sausage shape here. So this would be, let's say we have eyes on either side here. We've got, this would be the nose. And on either side of the nose, this is going to look pretty silly pretty quickly. Right, we can add a couple little circles here. All right, let's draw some eyes just so we got these eyeballs. All right. So if this was the nose, we could start out by just sort of drawing that as the underdrawing. All right, and so then what we can do is we can take our pencil, and I'm going to go back over top of this. So then I'm going to take a line and go cutting in and cutting out. All right, so now we've got a shape like this. And then I'm going to come around. All right. And then I'm going to outline these parts of the nose. All right. And then let's say the light is coming from this angle here. I'm going to draw a little light bulb. So that's where the light is coming from. So let's do a little bit of quick shading on here. So if the light is coming from here, then this side of the nose is going to get most of the light, right? The light is hitting here. So this side is going to be, if we were, in fact, we're going to shade it. I'm just going to give it a quick little. So this side here, and I like to kind of identify where the highlights are. So this whole thing is a highlight. This whole thing is a highlight. And then this side is going to be the darker side. So let's put a little, I'm going to now hold my pencil from the side. Remember, I like to kind of put it down and pick it up so that I'm going to kind of go around this shape. This is why drawing it as a ball is helpful, right? Because it helps us remind ourselves that this ball is darker on this side. And then under here, this is the bottom part of the nose, so it's going to get darker. And of course I can color in that nose, right? And then as we come up, so this is the kind of the sharp edge of the nose, gets darker. And then you can also think that this part of the nose is also a ball. All right, so not only is it kind of shadowed down here, but we also, this part kind of comes forward a little bit above this part of the nose, or in front of this part of the nose. All right, and then this part just kind of bleeds out into the rest of the face. All right. So this, and we can just, I'm just gonna make this maybe a little bit darker than I would normally do, just so people can kind of see what I'm doing here. All right, and if this was the eye, and then we'd have some shadow underneath here as well. And then next class we're talking about the lips, so I'm not going to go into this, but we'll kind of draw a nose and kind of integrate it with the lips next class. Okay. So here's one version of how to draw a nose. All right. Just wait for a second here for people to kind of catch up. Maybe I'm just going to draw this just even darker so that really shows up really well on the camera here. So this is all about subtlety, right? It's about these areas that are, because there's no lines here, so we don't want to draw these lines too dark, otherwise it's going to really often can kind of draw more attention to the nose. And if we draw the too much angular lines on the nose, it tends to make people look older and also just sort of more more cartoony in a way, right? Because our mind knows that there's no lines there, so when we start putting a whole bunch of lines on the nose, it starts to look a little bit strange, which is why, again, if we kind of go back down, I know these are cartoon characters and everything, but people do this when they're drawing portraits of people's face. We see so many of these that are just little dots or little like L shapes for noses, right? There's not a lot of detail in any of these drawings. Oh, so yeah, okay, sorry, that's right. Okay, so let's go back here. We're going to do a different style of drawing noses because there are lots of different ways. So I'm just showing you the ones that are maybe the easiest to kind of wrap your mind around. So on the bottom of this page, I'm going to show you a totally different way of drawing a nose. So this one is, I think of it as kind of like drawing a tie, like a men's tie. So this one, we're going to draw a diagonal, and then another diagonal, come up, Actually, this might have been a little bit too angular, but... and then... we're going to go out. All right, so these are going to be, again, the eyes are going to be in here. Okay, so we've got this shape. And then we're going to do... so this would be the kind of the corners of the eyes. I'm just going to put a couple little boxes in here. And then I'm going to come outward. And you see how this line is diverging? All right, and so then they're going to meet up here. And then this here. So I actually, technically, I over-exaggerated this, but you know, there's lots of different noses, so who knows? We'll make it work. Okay, so again, here's our eyes are going to be in here. So this may look a little bit strange right now, but it's helpful to kind of see it this way, as very blocky geometric shapes, just like it is when we were drawing the Snoopy, right? And we're drawing circles, right? The same sort of thing, we're drawing circles, but here now we're drawing kind of angular shapes, because we want to try to get the light, the shadows to kind of help guide us in this drawing. So once we've got this in place, it helps us know that, okay, again, this is the light out here, that this area is going to be dark. This area is going to be even darker, dark here, but this is going to be probably one of the darkest parts, as well as under here. This one's going to be dark, dark, maybe not as dark as this one. So I'm just going to color these in. Now there's going to be, you know, once we start, we're going to start kind of shading this and adding more detail to it right now. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's kind of, just like we did up here, we're going to kind of round these out just a bit. All right, I'm going to kind of put this. And some people really have like a very defined kind of round part of the nose. So we got that. And then we're going to put these on either side. Again, this is just our sketch. We're going to put all this together to make a finished drawing here shortly. So we got these. And then I'm going to kind of curve that out. All right. And then the nostrils. So the nostrils, we're going to kind of start out with a couple of lines like this underneath, and then just curl them back. Depends on, like, I've got a big nose here, so I'm actually going to extend those nostrils. And everyone's got different nostril shapes too, right? Okay. So once we've got this basic drawing in place, right now you can start seeing this becoming more and more organic. Right, so now, again, if the light's shining this way, then here's this light coming in around here, this side, it's darker down here. So this one that I'm drawing right now, I think this one makes sense. It's fairly straightforward if you're drawing something from the front. I mean, this looks, you know, it's less complex, you know, than this one at first anyway. But this, we're going to draw some from some different angles, and you'll see that how it's helpful to kind of see it like this. All right, so this still going to have a little bit darker, but not quite as dark. And a little bit darker here, but Again, if that light's coming down from the side, whereas this one is getting much darker. Here. Okay. So now let's try drawing a nose from the side. So let's just take the same thing here. Okay. So I'm going to draw this nose. So this is going to be, I'll draw like literally like right along the side. We haven't drawn the face from the side because I'm actually saving that for a future episode because drawing the profile is a little bit more complicated. So I thought we'd kind of get a good handle on the rest of the face before we jump into that direction. So let's just carry some of these lines right across here. Okay. And let's say this nose goes out to here. That should kind of go right in here, but I've lost room. Well, let's just, these are, so this is going to be outside. Okay. So just ignore this lines here. It's my sketchbook, right? Okay. So then, if this is the side of the nose, and we just imagine, right, this is this kind of like flat part along the top, kind of moving this way, and this is the under part of the nose. All right, so the same sort of thing. We've got, right, this kind of big round part. Actually, maybe let's use the blue here. Sorry. Right, and then the nostrils. All right, and we curve this. Often there's a little notch up there. And then, I don't know how you want to put a little bump on there, or whatever you want to do. All right, and then this would be your forehead starting up here. And then the lip kind of coming down. And again, this is just, I'm just kind of throwing this in as a placeholder. What you'd want to be doing while you're looking at a photo, in fact, I'm going to look at some photos here in just a second, is how this looks from different angles. Because everyone's got a different shaped nose and nostril particularly. Speaking of which, sorry. So, I'll leave that, oh, sorry, it was not even on screen for all of it there. I see a couple questions here while I'm just waiting before we move on. Erica Ferguson, hi, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, learning and growing during the pandemic. Will you be adding more lessons on acrylic paint basics? Thank you for your awesomeness from Chicago, Illinois. Yes, hi Erica. I am. I'm thinking I'm probably going to do about another 6 of these drawing classes and then move into the painting classes. I think one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of painting is how people are going to do that at home. It's easy. It's one thing to pick up a pencil you found in your drawer and to start drawing. So the other thing is like paint. So I have to kind of figure out what I think as we go here. I'm going to find links to different paint that I recommend people buy so that people can buy it, and then it'll give enough time for people to get it shipped to their house, or if they want to go to a store, they can go buy it, so that they can kind of use the same paint I'm using, so that they're not using some weird combination of paints and getting different results than I am and getting all frustrated. So great question, and I've been meaning to talk about that for a while, so thanks. And Peter says, I sent you a drawing of my eyes on Twitter. Okay, so we'll look at your images that people have sent online here towards the end here. So I think we'll draw for another 20 minutes, and then we're going to start looking at the artwork, because I think there's about 4 of you have sent stuff in, so I want to take a look at some of those. And a few people sent things a few weeks ago that I didn't see. So if you are going to send me images that you want my feedback on, because that's usually how I structure the class, at the very end for the last like 15-20 minutes, I critique people's artwork, and by critique is not a bad word in art world anyway, is to kind of give you feedback, is to Okay, so let's say my wife took a whole bunch of photos here of me. So I'm going to throw these up on the screen. We're going to take a look at some of these photos here. So this is just, this again, you can do this with yourself. These are photos my wife took of me for this purpose so that I could use them for drawing. And well, let's kind of, I'm going to go through, so here's from the side angle, a few different side angles. These are what called 3/4 angle, because it's kind of turned 3/4 of the way, and then this is all the way. And we can even just see just slight differences in all of these angles. And here's from below, look at that, great, right up the nose, oh my goodness. And looking right down on top of my head. So what I want to do is I want to try drawing a few of these with you. You're welcome to use any images you like. I'm not going to draw the whole face because we're just focusing on the nose today. So what's the best way for us to do this? If you have if you have a mirror, right, we've got different kinds of mirrors you can use. If you've got a small one like this, why don't we just get it out right now and take a look at your nose, right? Because I think it's all of this stuff. I'm sure there's probably a few of you just sitting here watching without drawing or using a mirror or your phone and just trying to, like, through osmosis learn, which maybe that could work. But it's helpful if you actually do some of this stuff. So if you're looking in the mirror at your nose and you just kind of look up and then you look down into the mirror and turn side to side, just looking at the shape of the nose. And by doing that, you might just kind of like, whoa, that is a really tricky thing to draw, right? There's just so, like, where do I even start here? So that's why using some of the techniques I've just shown you, right? Or you can use a bigger one, or all of these are from the dollar store. But I've put these photos I took up here because not everyone's got something handy that they can use, although most of us have a mirror. If you're able to use the computer, you can always take a photograph of yourself and look at the image. But anyway, I'm gonna zoom in on this. Okay, so I'm going to draw a few different versions of, let me see. Oh, that's not the one I want. I want a different one here. Is this one? Okay. So let's make this even bigger. Just move that out of the way. Okay, so if I'm drawing this nose, it's the same sort of thing. It might be helpful just to kind of really quickly jot down where these eyes are going to go. Right, so let's say I've got an eyeball. Right, now technically the space between these eyes is roughly another eyeball apart. Right, so if I draw on one here, right, you can see in that photograph the way it looks. It kind of looks like maybe they're a little bit closer than a full eyeball. Right, but we also got, my eyes are kind of closed a little bit. I'm smiling. So I would be very leery about bringing your eyes any closer than a full eyeball distance. When your eyes, what happens when the eyes get too close together is it makes your person look a little bit like, it looks like their eyes are kind of crossed, and if anything, if there's ever a doubt, you can't figure out, should I go wider or closer together? Which way should I go? I would always say go further away, right? We saw, I mean, I guess we did start with Charlie Brown and they were pretty close, but so let's just think about, let's say this eye, and then we can do another eyeball down here. And you're pretty much in this area where this is going to be the bottom of the nose. Now again, maybe this isn't the best photograph for me to use because I'm smiling, and when we smile, what tends to happen is like facial features kind of get squished, right? So I was thinking last night while I was getting, you know, I should have taken one where I wasn't smiling. Okay, so let's go down into here. So let's say if this is the tip of my nose, right? So if I drew, this is the middle of my face, and this is the tip of my nose, right? I'm just going to draw these little lines apart here. Now you could use that one that we did before. This would be probably the easiest way to draw this one that I'm starting here. But since this one is kind of relatively straightforward, I do want to teach you the little bit more complex version right now. All right, so let's say this is bottom here. Now we've got, these are the inside points of the eyes, right? Then I'm going to go out here. All right. So these come, so this is kind of the outside part of the nostril is going to be in, well, yeah, in this area right here. Okay, so this is the bottom, very, very bottom tip of the nose. And this is pretty subjective, but I'm just, since we don't really see too much of my nostrils, I'm just coming up a little bit here. All right. And then I'm just gonna draw these. And then this. And then this would be so you see these, this is kind of the, you know, here's the bridge of the nose and then the forehead, and it's going to kind of come right about over top of those eyeballs so the eyes don't fall out, right? Now I actually probably could bring these in a little bit more and make this wider, but let's just kind of stay here. So once I've got this in place, this is basic structure. In this one, we've got, I'm going to kind of put in the bottom part of the nose right here, since I'm kind of looking straight on the camera and coming in here like this. So you see how this is different than this one? This one, the face was tilted up ever so slightly, so we see more of underneath the nose. Whereas again, because I'm laughing, my whole kind of face is kind of crunched up, so I don't see the underside of this nose so much. All right, and then we've got this here. And I've got a bit of, I got kind of this round nose as opposed to a real pointy nose. So I'm just going to kind of draw that kind of circle in there so you can kind of see it. All right, and then it kind of comes up here. So now let's kind of start shading this. And we know this is going to be the darker area. You can even see a little line in here. We see even a little bit of reflection underneath here, which is kind of, we haven't really talked about reflected light so much in this class, but it's a little bit more forward than we'll talk about. But, you know, there's light is kind of reflecting, you know, off of my mustache and off of my lips and chin and just brightening things up a little bit. But this area right here is definitely much darker. as I do this, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm looking at the photograph and then I'm squinting my eyes so that it really helps me see the darkest parts of the drawing. So I'm drawing and then I'm opening my eyes and then I'm look at the image and I squint my eyes a little bit and then look a little more. And that just helps me see the areas that are darker than other areas. We see these kind of little highlights of the light on there. I want to be kind of careful because if I do anything that could look like a little pig's nose, those little kind of little circles I put on here. The other thing too is you can see, on the top of my nose here, it appears like it's shadow, but this is also just like the color of my skin. It's a little bit more red up here. So I want to be careful about getting too dark on, there's a difference between the color of your skin and the different tones and, all this, the skin is not just one flat color. Even if we were in a room that was perfectly lit from all sides, right? So I'm just trying to be conscious of that. So we want to be sort of aware that there's difference between shadow and then the color of something can really affect things. Okay. I'm not going to draw the eyes. That's something we're gonna do in a few weeks. Okay. So, depending on your face or how you draw it, like this would be kind of helps get us into the ballpark, right? The basic shape of that face. So now, maybe below here, I'm going to draw. Well, maybe I'll just wait for just a second here. Just double check, see where we are in the comments. Peter saying he's thankful for the feedback on his drawing so far. So we'll see. I can't remember how many people sent in drawings, but I'll try to get through as many as possible, and we'll see if we can get to yours, Peter. Okay, so let's move on to another drawing here. Which one do I want? We'll try a 3/4 here. Very little difference between this one. I think is a little bit easier maybe for you to see the shape of that face here. Oh, whoa, 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 what's going on? Okay, so let's attempt this nose. So I want to see if I can. I'm going to see if I can fit two noses from the side right here. Okay, so let's start out with kind of the most obvious part. So when we start turning to the side, it can feel a little bit easier to see the shape, right? So we've got the slope of the nose. And let's just draw what we can see, right? So this is this eyebrow, right? And here's this other eye kind of coming in here. Right, here's the bottom. Right, so here's the eyebrow is going to be right here. Okay, so this is the nose, and let's imagine a eyeball. So if we've got an eyeball here, right, then we got another eyeball here. So that means, right, that this should be the kind of the bottom of the nose in this area here. Right? Shouldn't be too much further higher or lower, but this gets us into the ballpark. Like if your nose is a little bit shorter or longer here, that's fine. It's where people notice, let's say this would be the bottom of the nose, and then the nose is really big. People are pretty forgiving for these small changes. It's when things get really exaggerated, which is, again, not a problem if we want to play around and have some fun here. Okay. Now I'm going to draw kind of just a little kind of flat part here. And then this is going to kind of come up here. And then I'm going to draw this eye. So I'm drawing what I can see again, right? You can see this part of little skin here, the fold right before that eye, right? So this is the inside of the nose, right? And then look how I can drop this down here, right? And so now this looks a little bit confusing for people, but okay, so I've got this bottom part of this nose here. And let's just articulate some more of this eye. So I'm going to put another eyeball in, which should be in this area here. I'm running off the page, but in this area, it's going to be a little bit bigger than this one because this eyeball is a little bit further away, right? So I got this, and then this eyelid. Oh, what am I doing here? Oh, look at these eyes. So this is good to come up to a place where I recognize this problem, right? I'm just sort of drawing away, going blah, 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 talking away, and I kind of maybe lose track of what's happening. And then I want to be able to see this problem now, not 20 minutes from now, not an hour from now. I want to know this, 3 minutes into a drawing. And I can look here at my eye line, right? And then I can look at the eye line in the photograph and I realize, oh, actually, this might even come up a little bit. So I got to make some changes, right? So that means that this eye, you know, here, that's the iris, right? And then so this corner is actually going to be much higher, right? So then let's draw. I'm going to build it back outwards. I know this can seem a little bit confusing. You just have to kind of stay with it. All right, moving everything up. Maybe, yeah, I'm going to use a different color here to start making things make a little bit more sense. So let's say I'm going to start with this. I'm just going to darken this just so you can see. And so we have these, here's this nose shape here, and underneath. Okay, so now let's take a look at this nostril, right? It just appears to be kind of almost like this upside down shape, right? I can't really see the curving in. That's fine. We're going to draw what we see. All right, so here's... I should know the names of some of these here. I can't remember off the top of my head. All right, here's this another round part, right? If we had this one was round, this is round in here. So I'm going to come up. So, you know, if you have a willing partner or friend who could pose for you, that would be great so that you could have something to study from and you could draw their face, or you could draw your own face. All right. So again, let's just look where we are here. From this angle, you know, I'm looking up. Where does, you know, if I go straight up, it's basically right into the corner of this eye here. In fact, this we probably change shape. Otherwise, I think we're pretty good. So now let's just add a little bit of shading. And if this was your own face that you're drawing, you could spend as much time or as little time on here as you like. So I'm squinting my eyes, and then I'm looking for little clues as to this shape. You know, I see this kind of almost like a triangular form right here. So let's darken this in. It's a little darker there. All right, then it gets darker in here. I might have gone a little bit too dark with this line. That's okay. All right, it should kind of transition a little bit smoother than I've done, but you know, we're just learning here. Now we can see this area here has got some light, so I'm going to kind of be a little bit light on that. And then underneath it gets really dark. And even underneath here, this part of the nose. And then as we come out into the face, it's going to soften. All right, here's these eyebrows, my big eyebrows up here. Right, poking out here. And, you know, right now this just needs finesse. I just need to kind of keep on working on it, right? So here's this kind of smile line. The other part of the face is coming out here. So I just need to keep on shading. Again, I'm squinting my eyes. You know, in this photograph, there's actually a shadow, so I'm just gonna draw this darker area, right? Like if I squint my eyes and I look at that, this probably is the darkest place, followed by underneath the nose in here, and then this line right in here. So what do you see when you look at it? You can also see as I'm shading, I'm always kind of turning my pencil and trying to kind of to be drawing in the different angles that I'm kind of carving around the form. Right, like if this area, if I feel like this edge is maybe a little bit too hard, well, I'm just gonna get my eraser out and soften this up. Right, so when we did that value scale a while ago, right, here we're going from very dark into bright. We want this to be a smooth transition so that we don't have a line in between them. How much more do I really want to spend on? I think makes sense here. So now let's, I'm going to draw another nose from the side. Okay. So same sort of thing. I think it might be helpful to, when I'm drawing a side profile, I often will start with the eye. Right, so I'm kind of like, what's the shape of this eye? Right, so we've got this, and again, let's draw an eyeball here. And I'm always sort of like looking, like what is the angle of that? It looks pretty good here. Right, it's gonna come out on top, okay. And this means this is gonna be a smaller. All right, so I'm always kind of adjusting. And then this eyebrow kind of coming up, basically touching my eyes again, right? So we've got this here. Here's my forehead. And then the nose. So the top of the nose, like this intersection point is kind of usually right towards, like above the eye. Like say, so often people will draw this right here, but then that means your forehead is kind of coming in a little bit low on your head, right? So let's just draw another eyeball so we can kind of get an idea of how big this nose is going to be. right? And where is the, so to find out where how big this nose is, just start kind of dropping these anchors down here. Right, so the tip of this eye basically comes down. So if we have, it's right here, right? So I'm drawing kind of angular, right, like a triangle. Same sort of thing. The bottom lip, you can't really see with because I got a mustache, but it's going to be up a little bit forward. The rest of this, we're gonna spend time doing the rest of the, so we're not gonna draw all that rest of the facial features, but just so we see this, and then let's let's just zoom right in on here. Get right in here. My poor face, looking at all the details, and I probably shouldn't have taken this photograph at, I think this is like 10 o'clock at night. There's a little bit of shadow, 5 o'clock shadow, right? And we've got this nose. So just like we did with the block-in technique or the envelope technique, I just start kind of chiseling away into this shape. And maybe before I start going in here, let's just, again, I squint my eyes, and what do I see in here, right? This appears to kind of come around here. We've got a highlight, another highlight. Right, my face, my cheek kind of comes out into here. So now let's try drawing some of this here. I'm gonna give it a quick sharpen with my pencil. All right, so this is basically, in terms of, I've got the outline of the nose, and then I've got this part of the nostril, and everything else is round shapes. So I don't have much else to go on here when it comes to this nose. Okay. And then I'm up here into my forehead. So I think in just a few minutes, what I'm going to do is just kind of start playing around with some of these drawings, or coming up with a few different ones, and just showing you how we can really start playing around if we want to abstract this image. Squint my eyes. What is the darkest part? Under here it's dark. Got a bit of a highlight there. And then it's really dark in here by my cheek, right? So I'd love to see if you draw up other people's eyes or noses or your own, right? Trying to just do little simple things over and over and over, you'll get better at it. Okay. So if I wanted to play around, right, when I'm drawing these noses, you know, I could draw like pointy noses, long, right, give it a bump on the nose, round noses. I've seen block noses. I mean, there's so many different ways that we could do this. Let me see. How from the front, you know, we could really kind of play up the round nature of it, and we could literally, you see some people do this. Sometimes often you see people just do the nostrils on their own like that. Or you might see something, let's say, like a little bit of nostril. You know, so you really want to sort of play around, experiment. What I would encourage you to do over the course of the next week would be to, where am I here? Is to spend some time. I'm going to close this here. If you want, you can always go back and pause and watch. Let's say, I'm gonna make this bigger because I'll just show you, if I was wanting to do a little bit of research and to get better and better at doing this is what I would do. So I would go open a web browser. I'm gonna go, let's make this smaller so everything fits in the picture. There we go. And let's search for, we'll just go human face. Actually, I'll show you how I do this right from the beginning. Whoa, who's Marsha Johnson? So let's say human face, right? And then I'll go to images. And I personally often will go to tools and go to large so I can see, because if I want to copy any of these images, I want to work from the highest resolution image I have, right? So let's say we go to drawing. This will show us some faces. No, I don't like any of these. Human face cartoon. Or even just these things that have just shown up here. A couple little dots, right? Just a little bit of shadow on one side and a dot. A little bit more involved. Here's just one line, a couple dots. A semicircle. A semicircle. A couple little dots. Look at this. This is actually quite a popular thing that I've seen in children's books, particularly these days, is just like one solid color for the nose, like that. Here, look at this, not even a nose at all. So usually noses are often the first thing to be omitted when people do pictures, if they're going to take anything away. It's big long noses, droopy noses. What are some other ones here? Right, these noses that are connected right into the eyes. Couple little dots, like, I mean, it is literally infinite. Like, here's even like this one, right? So a kind of just a flat color, not even the whole bridge of the nose, but just this little kind of dot in the center. This one, in this drawing, we would expect to see the nostrils here, but the artist has removed the nostrils. This is also kind of a style, a drawing style is, let's say you draw everything with black pencil or dark color, and then to use just a slightly darker color than your flesh tone to kind of indicate where the nose would be. That's often a way people get around the problem of a dark line for a nose. So that's a great strategy right there. You can see it, same thing here, where the eyes have been outlined, but the nose is just a little kind of small shadow on the face. So again, look at this whole style, not a single nose to be seen on any of these. So it's something to think about, like as you're drawing a face. I just lost battery power above here, so I'm going to start losing some power on some of these cameras shortly here. Here's kind of a traced version, right? Just a couple of little lines. So you always, when it comes to drawing noses, the less the better, right? It's pretty easy to overdo a nose, so you kind of always want to just err a little bit on the side of being a little bit lightly drawn, right? Like, here's this portrait and just, there's not a lot of detail. In fact, most of the nose is shown just with flat colors. Okay, I think this is fairly straightforward. This is often, I was gonna say that some female characters, more noses than is often usually drawn in here. Okay, well, I think you get the idea. Okay, so let me, as I pull this together here, I'm gonna take a look at some of the drawings that people sent. So let me. So I just want to show these off the top. And give me 1 second and I'll pull up. So we had a few drawings oops, that I didn't see. Okay, so let me, how do I want to show you there? So just showing, and I apologize, I can't remember who sent this image from last class at the very end, just sort of talking about some of the drawings. I think these are done, they did their own photos. I'm not sure where they got these photos from. But I think these are fantastic drawings. I love the way that they've been organized in the sketchbook. I like how there's been a few, it looks like a couple different types of color here. It looks like we've got pencil and maybe pen or darker pencil going over top of the pencil, and even another color. So that's a really smart way of having, you know, at your command, a few different colors and tools to use. So you're not always trying to distinguish things between just one pencil. So I really like these lines that are helping to kind of describe the shape of the rest of the face to help give volume here. These are fantastic. And actually, I also see it looks like possibly even using a little bit of white pencil in there. So I have usually kind of hanging around on my drawing table a white pencil that is helpful for going in and adding highlights maybe afterwards. If you've put in a little bit too much darkness or you want to go faster, then you can just kind of come back and put a little dab of white pencil over top of your pencil lines to kind of bring a pop back in there. Because that, especially the reflection in the eye, is so helpful. And just start looking at photographs. Look at photographs of yourself, maybe if there's no reflection in the eye, not only does the face look really dark, but there's almost a slight sinister quality to a face that doesn't have any reflection in the eye. Because what that tells us is it's almost like the part of our brain that sees like healthy versus non-healthy, right? If the eyes aren't reflective, there's no light bouncing off of them, then it would tell us that, you know, there's maybe some kind of thing wrong with that person's eyes, that they're not wet, right? That they're dry, like to an extreme extent, and maybe they've got some kind of problem we want to stay socially distanced from, right? So that's really smart. I really like the use of these, I think, 4 different kinds of tools here to make that drawing. And let's see. I'm going to show, this one is from a few weeks ago, or how long ago? This might have been a month ago, really. So I apologize. Again, I'm not sure who did. These are just screenshots I took off just because I didn't want everybody to see all the other questions and info here in the background. So this is, we did the Auguste Rodin's The Thinker. We did some drawings based on, or one drawing based on that. I think this is an exceptional drawing. I think I love the different colors again in here. You know, oops, oh, where are we? Right, this kind of the red and green and the yellow and orange. All those things really help build volume in here, and it's nice going over colors with other colors. I think you really nailed the proportions. I think there's a few little things that say the neck might be a little bit long, and you know, this arm might be a tad bit long, and this leg might be a tad bit short. These feet are a little bit short, but those are minor little changes that are very ultimately, if you were to draw this drawing again, you'd be able to kind of fix those problems. I think it's always easier to draw the drawing a second time, and then you'll solve a lot of the problems that you might have faced the first time around. But like, you know, for instance, hands are some of the most difficult things to draw, and we're going to learn how to draw hands. And you've already done a fantastic drawing with this hand, right? This is beautiful. These fingers up here look a little bit more like there's a rubber glove on there, so we just want to kind of look and try to get a little bit more finesse here, looking for a little bit more of the, like when you're looking closely at fingers, you know, there's, you know, the skin bunches up and creates all these little, because, you know, the skin's got to go somewhere. When your fingers are bent, skin stretches over the knuckle when they come up here. So when this happens, it makes it look like we're wearing a rubber glove, because a rubber glove kind of smooths things over. So there's just a little tiny thing to kind of think about. I think that's fantastic. And then I just want to show this. This is actually, these are photos that my mom sent in, because my mom's been doing this class, and she's, I see, watching right now, and which is, I think, is so awesome. I love it. I love that she's doing this. Hi, Mom. Love you. But these, I believe, if I understand from her email, is that she's drawn both of her grandchildren's eyes. So this is, I'm not sure who's who here, but our daughter, my wife and I's daughter, and then my sister's daughter, my niece, which I think is fantastic. You know, looking through photographs of friends and family and just try studying their eyes, because even here we see two very different eyes, right? And so I love that she's looked at these drawings and looking for the subtle kind of changes that give each person a different, you know, not only just they look slightly different, different personalities, right? Like this might be my niece is 7 or 8 years old. I can't remember. This looks like it could possibly be her, because she's a little bit older. She's got more of an eyebrow versus our daughter, whose eyebrows, you know, she's almost 11 months, so much thinner, lighter eyebrows. So, I mean, all of those little details when we're drawing help create, or that specificity is so important, right? So we can kind of see two different personalities and two different eyes, and that's all we have on the page. So I would encourage you to do things just like this, is to just try doing a study. Just look at all of your friends, take a bunch of photographs off of YouTube or Facebook or your Twitter or whatever, Google images, celebrities or not, try drawing their noses and or their eyes or whatever other facial features. I would say at this point, avoid trying to draw the whole face, because that can be pretty overwhelming, but try just drawing the nose from a few different angles, and I will guarantee you, you will probably, I would say, well, I'd say 90% of you, when you first start doing that, are going to be unhappy with, say, the first 5 drawings you do, right? If let's say you're happy with the first 2 or 3 drawings, that's awesome. But I bet you it's beginner's luck, and then The next few you do after that, you're going to be very frustrated with. So it's not an easy thing to do, but the fact that you don't like them doesn't mean they're bad, right? They're not, doesn't mean because you're trying to draw George Clooney's nose and it doesn't quite look like George Clooney's nose that you imagine. It doesn't mean that you haven't done something really interesting that has the potential to turn into something really powerful and incredible. Because what I see that is your own personal style starting to kind of bubble up through the surface. Bloop, bloop, bloop. You know, you can imagine this like lava pit or something. All of a sudden a bubble pops up, another bubble pops up, and you know, if you're looking down, oh my goodness, where are all these bubbles coming from? That's your personality coming through in your drawings. And you can try to resist it all and tamp it down and try to draw like some weird imaginary version of a nose that you think you should be drawing. Or you could start trying to kind of embrace those kind of things. The weirdness in your drawing is what makes you you, and is the source for, if you wanted to become an artist professionally, that's what people want. People are going to come to you looking for your drawings, not for you to draw something that somebody else did. All right? Maybe they'll ask you to imitate somebody else, and maybe you could do that for a few years to get your make a few extra dollars or whatever. But eventually, as you're going to go, it'll be impossible for you to resist your own style coming through. So, you know, when we were looking at some of those images of different kinds of portraits and different noses, right? I'm sure that there's some of you who are looking at some of them and had very different reactions to them, right? Whereas some people were looking at, I'll just bring this right back onto the screen here. You know, whereas there's some people who might love this kind of more abstract version, very simplified cartoony version. Some of you might like that. There's some people who might like this style more, like a coloring book kind of style, or, you know, a very children's book kind of style, right? Or where would be something more representational, maybe so-called more photographic or lifelike, right? And so that you can see that these are totally different approaches. It doesn't mean one of these artists is like amazing and the other one is garbage, because all of these people are doing totally different things. It's not really fair to compare them. So it's just, what is it that you want to be doing? And it's hard at first to figure that out. How you figure it out is just by doing it and then starting to recognize kind of some trends and patterns that you keep on doing. And then you ask yourself, is this a good trend that I want to develop? Or is this something I'm just like, I hate this, I cannot stand what I'm doing? Okay, well then that's an area that we got to work on. So then maybe going and finding some books, looking at images of how other people have drawn things and saying, I want to draw like that. Like, as just before I kind of wrap up here, oh, I'm going to look for Peter's drawing shortly. Rembrandt. I'll just, Rembrandt is one of my favorite artists. I'm sure you've heard of the name Rembrandt. Maybe you don't really know why you've heard of him or what's so cool or important about him. But what I find fascinating, so here's a self-portrait of Rembrandt. And what I think is really funny about Rembrandt is every time he does a picture of somebody, I feel like his nose shows up on everybody's face. And he just seems to me to be the most extreme example of that. But I think that's in everybody's artwork, is that we tend to like draw ourselves in everybody's face when we draw a portrait. So, and Rembrandt is also super prolific. He made like tons and tons and tons of art, also tons and tons of self-portraits. So you often have to kind of weed through, but I just feel like everybody looks like Rembrandt in his pictures. Okay, so give me one more second here. Actually, while I'm doing that, I'm going to bring up suggestions for next class, and I'm going to find Peter's image. Here we go. So over the course of the next, what's today is Tuesday. On Thursday, our next class, we're going to talk about drawing lips, which is a really fun, again, just like the nose, but maybe a little bit less difficult than drawing the nose is drawing lips. And we can really have a lot of fun drawing them and simplifying them. I thought Peter said... oh, it sent it through Twitter. All these different kinds of channels, right? Too much social media. So what I'd like for you to do is look for images of people's faces, take photographs of your own and try drawing them. Try drawing the basic structure of those faces. Okay, so I'm just gonna drag Peter's drawing onto... Okay, so, and then I'm going to come back here. Okay, so here's a drawing Peter did of his eyes. Let's make this bigger or smaller here. And then he also sent in his reference image, so I'll just kind of quickly show this. Kind of, so I mean, just right off the top, what we see here is this photograph, you know, is like, you know, this selfie that is, you're really close to the picture, so it's going to be a little bit distorted, right? So we see this almost fisheye lens kind of quality where your eyes are kind of being pushed out to the side and your nose is much bigger. If we could see your nose, it would be like maybe almost twice as big as your nose regularly is. We've met many times, so I know what you... So this hardly looks like you. So I think that's important to point out that there is some distortion in the original photograph. And then when we look at this, I think you've actually done a fantastic job. I feel like what you've done with this drawing is almost sort of eliminate some of that distortion that was happening here. How can I show these two simultaneously? Let's bring this here, and then let's... Make that a little bit bigger. So, you know, if you were really trying to copy entirely this original photo, you can notice like I see mostly, let's say in this eye, like look how much curvature there is here, right? And then we really see your eye and this highlight here. And so some of that is missing in this drawing. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I actually feel like you've your drawing, I feel like, looks more like you than the photograph looks like you, if that makes sense. And that's not unusual that might happen. I think just our mind was going to start making some of those corrections. What kind of feedback? I think, first of all, just the attention to detail is outstanding in these drawings. I love the way that you've drawn your iris in here. I love these kind of bicycle spokes that you've got going on, and the highlights are fantastic. I think just a couple things I would suggest as you're, let's say, shading the eyeball itself. Right now you've got just horizontal lines going straight across. What I would try to do is just, you know, think about shading them in the shape of the eyeball and kind of making a little bit more round kind of marks, just to, because that's going to have by rounding them, it's going to emphasize the, you know, spherical nature of the eyeball, whereas straight lines are going to flatten that shape. I like the eyelashes. Again, another little thing is that even though our eyelashes may appear to kind of come down like that, I would suggest having a few, especially towards the end, kind of pop outwards. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. So that it, because right now they look like they're kind of almost on the inside of your eye. So we want, even though we have proof that they don't do that, when it comes to drawing, I always say, like, you sometimes have to draw things wrong in order to make it look right. And I think that's how people really get stuck, is that they get really focused on trying to draw exactly what the photograph shows us, and then they get frustrated because, like, this is what the photograph says. It's like, well, yeah, that might be what the photograph says, but in order to make things look believable as a drawing, we have to kind of fudge things a little bit. So I would just personally have a little bit more, like some hairs kind of coming, eyelashes just a little bit outside, breaking this kind of plane here. Again, like that, this highlight you could see is really bright, big shiny highlight on the top of your eyeball, and I feel like we don't have that here. And that would also help, because we've got this dark area down here, which makes sense because it's underneath. We also want to be focused on, like, where the highlight is, and often the highlights get missed in not just your drawing, but almost everybody. Almost everybody forgets how important the highlight is. What else can I say? I think also with this, you know, we can see a slightly different shape of this side of the eye, right? I think this would probably come up and down here, and then this eyeball or eyelid would kind of curve around here in behind. I think what's happened is because you have that fisheye kind of quality of the photograph, it's maybe being a little bit confused. Like, so if we're really trying to draw what we see in this photograph, it's kind of tricky to accomplish that. And I think what I think is happening is that you're taking the photograph and then trying to use it as inspiration to then using the kind of the grid that we talked about, and then you're kind of flattening things back out, which is actually a really high level, complicated thing to do. So now, I'm not saying this is bad. Again, I think this looks more like you than your own photograph of you. So you feel like you're in your mind kind of re-engineering the photograph to flatten it out, which is a complicated mental task for sure. I also think maybe this area underneath your eyes is a little bit too dark. I think you may find, especially on this side here, you know, if I squint my eyes and I look at your drawing, like this looks a little bit too dark, and this is definitely too dark. So that would have the effect of, if we did the full face, of making you look very tired, right? And maybe making you look older than you are, right? And you're a very youthful looking person. So that's, you know, whenever I'm doing a picture, and if somebody does have, like I have, you know, kind of, I don't know, you want to call them rings or bags under my eyes, but even if I'm drawing my own self-portrait, I'm very careful not to make this area too dark, even though it may appear that way in real life, because it'll instantly add like 10 years more to my own drawing of myself. So you'll often see when people do a drawing of somebody's face that they're very kind of delicate about that part of the eyes. And then lastly, I see these kind of little dark areas that almost look like tears in your drawing here, where the skin from your eyelid is kind of overlapping the bottom eyelid. I would say, because right now, I think it's a little disconnected. I think we need a little bit more shading in here, because this is still so bright. It looks like there's something kind of happening here. So I think I would just darken this area in here, and maybe not be so heavy on these dark areas, because it kind of looks like, you know, a jailbird who's got those tear tattoos. So that would be a little thing. It's just to darken this area and then lighten up here, because you can see, look how dark this is compared to this, right? You've got your eyelid is dark versus here, not nearly as dark, right? It's almost the same level of darkness as this area. Anyway, I could go on, but I think you've done absolutely fantastic. I would say maybe when you're doing the eyebrows, just go a little bit slower, right? And rather than trying to kind of really quickly kind of darken those in, because your eyebrows are fairly light color as well, right? Okay, everybody. Oh, I don't want to go there. Everyone's seen this already. So thank you, everybody, for sticking around and for drawing with me today and for learning a little bit about how to draw noses. I would strongly encourage you to try a little bit of this over the course of the next week. Take some inspiration from people like Peter or my own mother, who's been drawing throughout this whole time, right? And the progression I've seen from everybody who sent pictures is so exciting. It's super satisfying for me as a teacher to see people growing and getting better and better. And maybe you don't quite recognize it. You don't think you've gotten any better. You think you're exactly where you are when you started, but I guarantee you, you are miles and miles and miles down the road. Years ago, I walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and I had that same sort of thing. You just feel like, oh, I've been walking forever. Like, oh, that mountain is still so far away. And then you kind of look back and you're like, whoa, I can't even see where I started, right? Where I started was back by that mountain, right? So it's that sometimes we're so focused on looking at the road in front of us and how far away our destination is that we forget how far that we've come. So I applaud those of you that have been sticking with me and continuing to work so hard over the past few months. On Thursday, we're going to be drawing your lips, or your friend's lips, your daughter's lips, or whoever's lips you want to draw, but I'll have some pictures of my lips if you want to do that. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening or wherever you are, whatever time it happens to be. And yeah, where are we? We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.